Thank you, Samuel, for introducing the algorithmic method for COVID-19. And one of the most famous algorithmic method is the machine learning. And researchers has decided to use machine learning to fight the COVID-19 viral escape. What is viral escape? Viral escape is caused by the mutation of virus with a sufficient antigenic variation, which is our antibodies couldn't recognize the virus, like the alpha and omicron. And the importance of this cover is to prevent the reinfection or even more infection and death, and to help policy decision and resource allocation. So the idea is to use a language model. A language model can predict words with a given sentence, which shows that it learns the grammar and the semantic relationship. When we apply the language model to the virus, for the virus to preserve infectivity and evolutionary fitness, a successfully mutated virus must obey biological grammar or structure while changing its semantics for the antibodies so that the antibodies couldn't recognize the new virus. Let's take a look at some examples. For this original sentence, it is Australian dead in Bali. And we can know that the semantically closest sentence is Aussie dead in Bali, where Aussie has the same meaning as Australian. When it comes to the paper change, that is the method CSCS change, the sentence becomes Australian ballot in Bali. So the CSCS is called constrained semantic change search. The semantic change happens here, where the dead becomes ballot and the semantic change a lot. And why it is called constraint, it is because it can still maintain a good structure while having a high semantic change. That is noun, verb, and in a place. So we can also apply this change for the virus, like for the original virus here. After the CSCS change, you can see that its semantic changed a lot, which means that it has mutated a lot, and the antibodies may not be able to recognize it, while the new virus has a good structure. That means it's grammatically correct or its grammaticality is high, so that it can still reproduce and infect other people. So this virus will be considered as viral escape, and our antibodies couldn't recognize it. But for the virus here, you can see that although it is grammatically more correct, it mutates much less, and our antibodies may still be able to recognize it, so it is not a CSCS change. After we have understand the underlying idea, we can look at the data. For the input data, it will be a dictionary of virus-specific amino acid sequence. And for each sequence, we split the sequence into two parts with a indel for every position to train the model. Like one of the sequence examples is here. The indel is at position I, and the sequence has split into two parts. And for the output data, it will be the probability of an amino acid at the indel, and that the probability represents the fitness of the mutated virus. For example, the I here has the highest probability, which means that the model thinks when the indel has the I amino acid, the mutated virus will have the best grammar. Yes. And then we will compare the output with the distribution from the dictionary to find out the mistake and update the model. And then the model will learn the distribution of the probability for every position. And then the model, after training, it can determine the fitness of the mutated virus. So after looking at the input and output data, let's look at the model in between. The first layer that the input data will encounter is the BISTM layer, but it is called bidirectional long short-term memory. It is called bidirectional because it has two directions toward the indel. And LSTM is great at learning sequence data because it is designed to memorize, forget, and directly pass data, so that sequence data can be learned very good. And after the 2 by STM layers, it comes to the semantic embedding. It is where the most useful information is extracted, and it is a high dimensional array. So when we project it to a 2D graph for the coronavirus, we can see a graph like this. And we can see that it is a good representation for the coronavirus, because the COVID now we are suffering are gathered in an area, and similar virus like the COVID from the bat and pangolin are in the same area as well. While other type of COVID like the MERS COVID and SARS, they are at a different area. So we train the model with the input and output data, and the researchers try to predict the influenza H1 mutation. You can see that the model predict some yellow spots, which the yellow spot means that the high grammaticality and high semantic change, which means that those yellow virus is very likely to be a viral escape. And it is actually true, because you can see that the answer, the records, are actually gathered around the yellow area and green area. So the model predicts very well. In conclusion, COVID-19 pandemic might not be eliminated in a short period of time, and virus have high mutation rate. Each time it mutates, there will be a hard work on new sequence analysis, and our goal is to find the most important information through the analysis mentioned to help the society. That's all.